Good morning and welcome back. You're still tuned in to Salam Media with myself, Salailo Makwidiri, on a very, very beautiful Wednesday morning. In a bit, we'll be delving into a very critical topic of South Africans serving in the Israeli Defense Force and the mounting investigations surrounding their involvement in the IDF's actions, allegations of complicity in Zionist atrocities and violations of international law have cast a spotlight on this very, very concerning issue and raising urgent questions about accountability, legality, and the role of foreign governments in perpetuating oppression. And joining us in a bit is Paul Hendler. He's a long-standing member of the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign, the PSC out in Cape Town, and is also a very outspoken anti-Zionist Jewish South African. Paul has been at the forefront of advocating for justice in Palestine and calling for global solidarity against the occupation. And with his unique perspectives, we aim to explore the implications of this probe and just the broader struggle of the Palestinian liberation with South Africans being involved. Paul, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Salam Media. Really appreciate you giving us your time this morning.
Good morning, Salairo. Thank you for having me, and Shalom Aleichem to all your viewers.
Walaikum salam. Paul, I think first and foremost, let's start maybe with some context, if you can. Provide a bit of context about South Africans that are serving in the IDF. Just how prevalent is this phenomenon, and what do you think drives some of these individuals who many found are very young to be enlisting and going to serve in the Israeli army?
The context here is historical. Volunteering started before the State of Israel was formed during the Nakba, what the Israeli state calls the War of Independence, where there were many South Africans who volunteered. And Zionism, as a sort of ideology of state-centered Judaism, had a strong, established itself quite strongly in this country over the years, but it also grew internationally, the idea of volunteering to support the Israel Defense Force, which militarily, up to now, certainly could only fight very short wars. And this volunteerism would be often just at logistical level. But more recently, starting with about 2008, 2009, so 15 years ago, you had quite a concentrated flow of volunteers. They call themselves lone soldiers because they're away from their family at home and they're in another country, but it's their country, of course, as they see it. And since Operation Cast Lead, where I think it first came to light through some of our colleagues' investigation, they came across about 70 people who they identified, Jewish South Africans who had volunteered to serve in the IDF during that genocidal attack on Gaza. And then I got involved in this only about 6 or 7 years ago, and it was ignited by a public display of impunity and bragging by somebody who was part of an Israeli protest outside Parliament every week, and they were sort of confronting a Palestinian solidarity process on the other side of the street, and that a person was then also investigated, and we made a submission to our complainant made a submission to the police, a charge at the police. I went to the Hawks and ultimately to the Priority Crimes Litigation Unit of the NPA. But since then, so over the last 6 years, we've come across another 36 names that have actually formed part of another submission called the SA Zionist Terrorism Corridor Probe, which has got a considerable amount of research behind it and a profile of those 36 people, as well as an explanation of the laws, both local and international, that are being violated. Now, just to answer your other question, what is it that drives people in this way? Well, I'm from a Jewish background, and so I speak from experience over more than 7 decades now. There's a socialization process that happens in our families. It happens in the um, synagogues, and it's coordinated very broadly by an organization called the Zionist Federation, which has a network of affiliates. Um, and the central sort of ideology that they um, articulate is that without a state, a Jewish state, and whatever comes with that, which they don't talk about much, of course, but what comes with that is population relocation of those who are other than Jewish. Without that sort of Jewish state as the center of what it means to be Jewish, Jews cannot survive. They cannot survive culturally, and they're likely to succumb to the next genocide that a very hateful um, uh, Gentile world out there is actually directing at them. So there's a strong socialization process, and there may be, individuals who picking up um, money. I've heard reports recently about some of these lone soldiers getting paid $4,000 a month.
Mm.
I don't know. I can't verify that, but they come from fairly reputable newspapers. But and there may well be that sort of, may call it possibly a mercenary aspect to it. But I think more relevant to answer your question is that there's a very deep-seated ideology of Jewish identity here, and that when you read what these 36 people are posting on their social media, and what adults, parents, and other adult supporters are saying of them, they are carrying out their moral duty by going to defend their country and their people against terrorist enemies.
Mm, No, really, really quite concerning. The fact that this is happening at synagogues and in schools also, I suppose. But I want to chat a bit about this expanded probe. Could it be, a watershed moment where we ultimately have those that are serving in the IDF ultimately being held to account when they return back to South Africa? Could we, start seeing that happening, because we've known about these cases? Some of them have came back, went back numerous times. Their profiles are known, as you've mentioned, but ultimately our justice system has not done its due diligence.
Well, I think it's not a watershed moment in the sense that the um, Hawks are going to carry out a proper investigation and bring it to trial, or at least bring it to the Priority Crimes Litigation Unit in the NPA to investigate further and give their reasons if they do not decide to prosecute. What's happening at the moment, because this has been submitted to them already 15 years ago with the people who were identified during Operation Cast Lead. And as I say, I've been part of a team and of complainants that has presented this again to the Hawks and the NPA over the last 6 years. And the constant response is a non-response. It's we don't have enough evidence, we can't win the case, we're not going to investigate this further. Whereas what we have here is quite solid prima facie evidence. And for them to imply that it's up to us as citizens who are fairly unresourced to go and do a a a a, um, a level of criminal investigation that could actually put together a prosecutable case is completely unreasonable. The state and its resources and its Department of Justice and Departments of Safety and Security are precisely there, resourced with sufficient budgets to carry this out. And And they do carry it out in other cases. I mean, I'm just thinking of the Zama illegal miners and what they're doing over there in a very problematic set of action, which we don't need to go into now. And there are cases where people are suspected of being involved in ISIS activities. People in South Africa, where they respond incredibly rapidly. I understand there are a few people at the moment in detention for being suspected of being involved, and I presume they're being held while the cases are further investigated. And we have an example of two very young men, the Tulsies, from I think from the West Rand in Johannesburg, who were caught in what looks like an FBI sting operation and hadn't really committed the types of crimes that we're talking about in case of serving in the IDF, but were actually held in detention for 6 years. They were recently released on parole. So there's a very different set of standards that are applied. And the conclusion that anybody who is not naive about power should draw is that the NPA and the Hawks are in a certain process, which I don't have research privy to. They are subject to the influence of the United States intelligence agencies and the State of Israel through its intelligence agencies.
Unfortunately, we have run out of time, Paul. Thank you so much for giving us your time this morning. We're going to leave it here for now.
Thank you very much.
That was Paul Hendler. He's a Jewish SA member of PSC, and he was just giving us a bit more insight on this expanded probe into South Africans serving in the IDF, which I think from now onwards there's going to be a deepening investigation into some of the Zionist atrocities. I think that's a story to look out for. Does South Africa have, the means, the legal mechanisms to make sure that those that are serving in the IDF or implicated to be serving in the IDF could be held accountable? So it would be really, really interesting to see how this expanded probe does in fact yield any kind of results. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be speaking to a human rights lawyer and academic based in Al-Quds University in Jerusalem, Munir Nusiba, and we'll be speaking about apartheid Israel's ban on Islamic call to prayer, which is seemingly a direct attack on Palestinians' religious rights, and we'll be hearing more insight on that and how they've been personally been affected in that part of the world. But we're going to take a quick break. More on that after this.